Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, streaming TV, home security, and automation in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis, lawmg.com. The IU School of Education, preparing teachers, scholars, and administrators to improve teaching in Indiana and around the world. education.indiana.edu. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members, thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. The electric scooters that have taken over several Indiana cities might not be as environmentally friendly as you think.
Do they really substitute away from trips that would have been done on foot or trips that would have been done using a car?
Indiana struggles with high infant and maternal mortality rates. It's felt more in rural areas where access to doctors is a major source of stress for expecting mothers.
My only options were Bloomington, Indy, and Evansville, and all of those are at least an hour away, if not longer, from my house.
Ahead, the reality of being a mother and trying to find a doctor for yourself and unborn child. The Secretary of State position is up for election this year. Coming up, more on the race dominated by the issues of election security and voting integrity. Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, electric scooters are taking over Indiana cities. They're often billed as an environmentally friendly transportation alternative, but as Rebecca Thiel reports, that depends on how you use them.
The companies Bird and Lime have dropped scooters in 5 Indiana cities: Indianapolis, Bloomington, Elkhart, West Lafayette, and South Bend. Most of the people who use them in Bloomington are Indiana University students in a hurry, like Nick Martin, a senior studying marketing and professional sales.
Honestly, it's because I've got a test to study for, so I kind of need to get here quickly. And it's kind of cold, so I just didn't want to walk.
Lime scooters, in particular, are advertised as an environmentally friendly alternative to cars. But when used as a substitute for walking or biking, they actually increase your carbon footprint. What's more, Nikos Zirogiannis, a research scientist at the IU School of Public and Environmental Affairs, says in Indiana, most of the electricity used to charge the scooters comes from coal.
I would say that the impact here in Indiana would be worse than the impact that those scooters would have in other states around the country.
Martin says, knowing that, he feels a little lazy using the scooters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to use them.
Those who charge electric scooters may also have to use gas to come pick them up. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
The mayors of Columbus and Bloomington are partnering to spur economic development across South Central Indiana. We take a look at how the two cities complement each other in a way that could bolster high-tech startups. Columbus's Jim Linup joined Bloomington's John Hamilton on Facebook Live this week at City Hall to talk about the joint venture.
You know, given the proximity of our communities and the notion that we have very complementary economies and complementary communities in many ways, it just makes sense for us to try to partner.
The cities are raising $1 million with the goal of leveraging up to $1.5 million from Indianapolis development organization Elevate Ventures. Hamilton says they will help develop co-working and entrepreneurship opportunities.
We'll be sharing the revenue, we'll be sharing the entrepreneur in residence who's kind of a mentor, and it's a 3-year agreement, and I really look forward to our communities collaborating more closely.
Just next door, Dimension Mill is preparing for an October 31st ribbon-cutting ceremony. The Trades District is a 12-acre portion of Bloomington's downtown certified technology park. The entrepreneur in residence will spend half of their time there and the other half with the Columbus Area Chamber of Commerce.
Our economy in Columbus has been very manufacturing-based for the last 50, 60 years, and we're convinced that manufacturing will continue for some time. I mean, it's not going away anytime soon. but there will be a high-tech component to this.
Lenup says supporting multiple business startups with up to 5 employees is something they can manage. It's his hope a few of those will eventually grow to become a 200-employer business. The official launch of the partnership is scheduled for December 6th. Hoosiers are being asked whether they support an amendment to the state constitution requiring the General Assembly to adopt balanced budgets. Now, that's unless 2/3 of the members of both chambers vote to suspend the requirement. Public question number 1 is on the ballot this year. Now, it was first proposed by Vice President Mike Pence when he was Indiana's governor. With us is Justin Ross, a professor at the School of Public and Environmental Affairs at Indiana University, to help explain the proposal. So, Justin, thank you for being here. Did I describe that accurately?
That's right.
Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, well, the act requires the state legislature enact a balanced budget over the 2-year cycles. It provides some general guidance on what counts as income to the state, what counts as an expense to the state, and what is appropriate for bringing those two into line.
So if it passes, what could it change or do to state government?
Well, it'll require some effort in terms of knowing how proposals are going to score under the balanced budget amendment in terms of how it impacts those defined revenues and costs. Since the act focuses on balancing general revenues with ordinary expenses, you might expect the legislature to try and do more in special funds and irregular costs.
So former Governor Mike Pence, as I said, and many lawmakers actually support this change. What are some of the positives that could come from this?
Well, the state legislature is already pretty good at balancing the budget and has done so for many years. And it does that because it has good norms. And I think that many have raised the concern that norms and political civility are eroding, and that might help to have some more formal rules that might protect us should those norms start to fail us.
Of course, there are those that are against this proposal too. So what are some of the negatives that could bring to the state government?
Well, for the time being, it's a solution in search of a problem, right? And we know from the experiences of other states that just because you have a balanced budget amendment, that doesn't mean you're going to make wise decisions. And there are plenty of states that have problems with fiscal sustainability that have no trouble complying with their balanced budget amendments.
So is the language in Public Question 1, is that a good way to think about a budget when you think about the size of Indiana's budget and how big it is?
Yeah, this act does pretty well in terms of defining revenues and expenses and that. What it does do is it is just looking at a part of the budget by focusing on general fund revenues as opposed to all the other funds and parts of government that exist in the budget process.
So maybe just a quick tip for voters as they go to the polls, what's something that maybe they should think about before they go vote on this Public Question number 1?
Well, one way to maybe make it a little bit personal would be to think in terms of a household budget. A way to think about this would be you have a very easy way of understanding what it means to live within your means. But what if there was a rule that defined what that was supposed to mean, and then you would be forced to write down, like, well, what can you count as income, what can you count as expenses? And that might cause you to do things you otherwise wouldn't do just to be in compliance with the rule rather than necessarily helping you live within your means.
All right, Justin, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. As the race to be Indiana's top election official is heating up, State House reporter Brandon Smith sits down with each candidate to talk election security and voter participation. And Indiana's high infant mortality rate is even worse in rural areas. Ahead, we look at access to quality health care in the heartland. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
The WTIU WFIU news team connects Indiana to the world. We bring you the top news of the day on radio, TV, and online. We round up the stories that have people talking each week and dig deep into the issues that affect your community the most. The WTIU WFIU news team is where you are and telling your story.
In a time of change, where can you find in-depth reporting and thoughtful analysis? Washington Week on PBS. Join moderator Robert Costa.
When I was at the Capitol this week, I encountered the same.
And a panel of award-winning journalists.
You're seeing a divided nation, and you're seeing.
For insights and perspective.
Tonight there was a key development in the
Senate. You won't find anywhere else.
What a week.
Washington Week.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Indiana's maternal mortality rate is twice the national average. Experts say one of the reasons behind it and the state's high infant mortality rate is a lack of access to care providers. It's a problem statewide, but as Brock Turner reports, it's especially felt in rural areas.
This time, Deidre Firestone says she's blessed with a normal pregnancy.
He was just doing his little water yoga is what I say, and he's a very, very active baby.
But last year, she wasn't so lucky.
My OB at that time basically told me the pregnancy was not going to be a sustainable pregnancy and that it was basically just going to abort itself and we had to go home and wait for that to happen.
Firestone was faced with a situation no mother wants. Her baby boy's chances were slim, but she wasn't willing to just give up on him. Her fight would require specialized care that wasn't available near her home in Lyons, Indiana.
My only options were Bloomington, Indy, and Evansville, and all of those are at least an hour away, if not longer, from my house.
Firestone called on her network of friends and found Dr. Mary Abernathy in Bloomington, which is over an hour away from her home. Abernathy supported Deidre and tried to help her through her pregnancy, but Deidre lost her baby. There's a tree in her front yard that she and her husband planted to remember Cohen, and a shadow box hanging in their living room.
So I feel like this time I'm going through pregnancy for the first time all over again. Last time it was there was just so many things that were different that I didn't get that I do now, just because our pregnancy wasn't your typical pregnancy.
There is one similarity, however. Firestone is still making the trip to Bloomington for all of her prenatal visits.
We have seen women from Evansville, which is, I think, roughly 2 hours away from us. We've seen women from Terre Haute. We've seen some women from the Seymour area and even from Madison, Indiana. So having this office here in Bloomington has helped them because they don't have to go all the way up to Indianapolis.
Indiana State Health Commissioner Dr. Christina Box says many Indiana counties are ill-equipped to care for the needs of pregnant women, especially those who are considered high risk.
In a lot of those counties, we don't have a family doctor or an obstetrician gynecologist that even does obstetrical care. Rural areas are losing their hospital obstetrical services. This is a common thing, and Indiana is one of those. We now have 87 delivering hospitals across our state with 31 counties that either have no hospital or their hospital does not have obstetrical services.
Box says women in need of emergency care can still go there, but the hospitals will likely not be able to adequately care for mothers and their new or unborn children.
So really, if the opportunity avails itself, they need to go to the nearest hospital that does do obstetrical services, which again, for some women may be as far as an hour and a half. And that can be too long sometimes when it comes to obstetrical care.
Abernathy and doctors across the state believe there's a clear connection between soaring maternal mortality rates and one of the nation's highest infant mortality rates.
They share the same risk factors. And there's a lot of interest and focus on decreasing our maternal mortality. And by doing that, you're probably going to have some shared kind of crossover with the infant mortality.
That's why rural health advocates are doing what they can to address a problem they believe is systemic in Indiana and the nation. OB navigators are one resource officials believe can begin to turn the tide. The concept is simple. Navigators are often non-doctors who help guide women through the pregnancy and stick around until the baby's first birthday.
The OB navigator will be the person that delivers that education, because oftentimes the mom will come into the doctor's office and the doctor do a quick exam, the nurse before, the medical assistant before has done blood pressure and weight check, and do you have any questions? And usually you're so overwhelmed when you're in those situations that you can't think of your questions. But the OB navigator is going to be having weekly or bi-weekly contact with the woman.
While strategically placing OB navigators with women throughout the state might begin to chip away at a high infant and maternal mortality rates, it does little to help with access, and it's that drive that causes Deidre the most stress.
It terrifies me, like what if something goes wrong? I would have to at least wait an hour or longer, depending on traffic, depending on what time of the day it is,
to get to my specialist if I felt anything was wrong. I mean, I could go to, my local hospital, but I have that relationship with my specialist to where I only want to go to her.
Firestone's thankful she found a doctor who is so in tune with her needs, but she can't help but wonder how her care might be different if she lived in another zip code.
Definitely be appreciative of it, because us in rural Indiana, we don't have those access and the avenues to get to those kind of doctors, and it's just something that you don't appreciate until you need it.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Brock Turner.
Hoosiers will choose their next Secretary of State at the polls this year. It's a race between incumbent Republican Connie Lawson, Democrat Jim Harper, and Libertarian Mark Rutherford. The Secretary of State is Indiana's chief election officer. He or she is also responsible for enforcing regulations on security investments in the state and is in charge of records of all the corporations operating in Indiana. It's a race more Hoosiers are paying attention to this year because of concerns about election security. State House reporter Brandon Smith sat down with each candidate to talk about the key issues in the race, starting with incumbent Lawson.
There's been a lot of talk this particular cycle, going back to 2016, really about election security and what that means for the country and the state. So talk a little bit about what you've done so far to try to secure Indiana's elections.
We know that the state is most vulnerable because of human error. That's what happened in Arizona. And so the FBI told us there's two very important things you can do to protect your system. Strengthen your passwords, which we have done. Anyone who has access to a statewide voter registration system has a longer password with numbers and symbols, and so we've strengthened those passwords. But we also are using two-factor authentication. Every county in the state of Indiana is now using two-factor to access statewide voter registration system. Most counties I should say, are also using the token. And so they have a USB token that they insert into their personal computer. In addition to using their username and password, that token says, yes, I'm physically present. I should be able to get into the statewide voter registration system. And we took it a step further. That token even is time sensitive. So if I'm a part-time employee and I'm only supposed to have access to the system from 8 till noon, that's the time period that the token allows me to have that access.
One thing that national experts say, paper ballots as a backup at the very minimum are really key. A lot of Indiana counties don't have them. We don't have the money at this point to transfer over, or at least that's what you've said. Is that good enough? I mean, shouldn't we ensure that paper ballots are being used in every county?
Voters need to understand no voting machine used in Indiana is connected to the internet. Our tabulation machines are not connected to the internet. And every machine that is used does have a paper trail. They may not have the new recommendation, the new voter verifiable paper trail, but we're moving in that direction. And I think it's important also to remember that, all of these recommendations came about later this, our General Assembly left in March, session was finished. So the recommendations came about in summer, early fall. And so obviously we're moving that direction. I've met with most of our vendors. We're talking about how we can get to that voter verifiable paper trail, but I assure you that every machine has a paper trail.
There hasn't been a Democrat in the Secretary of State's office in a couple of decades now. Should there be more balance in the leadership of Indiana?
The Democrat State Party made a blunder, and they sent out hundreds of thousands of absentee ballot applications to their voters. And when I learned the scope of the issue, I stepped up on behalf of Democrats and I said, these forms should be accepted. And so I can't think of anything that gives any more balance than that. I protect all voters, and our office works on a bipartisan basis.
That's it. Thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Okay.
Libertarian candidate Mark Rutherford is calling for reforms to prevent gerrymandering and to modernize what he says are outdated election laws and procedures.
I want to talk about, as a chief election officer, what do you feel that Indiana isn't doing that you would do differently?
Well, the voting security is a horrible thing. We're not even close to what banks do, what big companies do, small companies do in security. Small companies have better security than the voting systems in Indiana. It's not getting the attention it needs. And that's awful, because the first thing that government does to be respected is have voting systems that people trust. we have no backup system paper right now. Why do you have a paper backup system now? Because the electronic system is not secure enough.
Given the criticisms you and others, including Mr. Harper, the Democratic candidate, have sort of lobbed at what Secretary Lawson has done or hasn't done on election security, along with the General Assembly, should Hoosiers be worried about their votes and whether or not they're secure when they cast their ballots?
They should be worried about their votes and casting their ballots. You never know when what I would use the term meltdown happens. You don't know who's doing what. We know that there are people who have always done this. If you study history, historians know this, countries have been delving into other countries' businesses for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So you need to be ahead of it and have the systems to counter that, and it's just not happening right now.
The Secretary of State oversees elections. Yes. Should the Secretary of State also be playing a role in advocating for election reforms like independent redistricting?
Yes. As Secretary of State, if you're paying attention, you should be telling the General Assembly what's working and what's not working. It should be the #1 advocate for election reform. And we do need election reform. We need it on gerrymandering and redistricting, where it's not politicians picking the voters, it's voters picking the politicians. Gerrymandering prevents that. We need to have somebody there going, this needs to change.
What other election reforms would you like to see Indiana kind of take part in?
Well, one of them is that I like to joke, but it's really not a joke, that we have a great election code for 1870. We no longer do a horse and buggy or a horse to the courthouse. There's no need to make sure everybody's together on the same day to make sure that we have only the people who should be voting. You can have voting in other ways that other states are experimenting with. Early voting should be more convenient. Why should we just have one day? Why should it be just 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock? When that's not the way this world works anymore, especially here in Indiana. Those hours keep people from voting. It's easier to absentee vote than it used to be, but still, that's a hassle. Why can't there be more time, more early voting centers? Those are reforms that are desperately needed.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
All right, well, thank you.
Jim Harper hopes to be the first Democrat serving as Secretary of State in decades. He wants to increase election security and improve voter turnout.
So I think a topic when it comes to the Secretary of State's race that's on a lot of people's minds is the issue of election security. Should Hoosiers feel like Indiana's elections are secure?
What we do know is that our state leadership is not doing enough to ensure that our voting machines are secure in the state of Indiana. We know that our voting machines are vulnerable in this state, and we know that Indiana and the entire country is a target. What I'm concerned about is that we haven't taken enough steps to make sure that we're securing our voting machines this year.
So what steps would you take?
I'm a strong supporter of making sure that there's a voter-verified paper trail, paper ballots essentially, in every county. Indiana is one of only 13 states that does not require a voter-verified paper trail. Most counties do not have them. I think that we need to enact them. I wish we had done it this year for the 2018 elections, but absolutely we need to do it for 2020.
Beyond election security, there's the issue of election reforms. I'll start with this, which is the Secretary of the State the person who should be advocating for reforms like independent redistricting?
Yes, the Secretary of State is the Chief Elections Officer, so I think it's critical that the person in that office show leadership on making sure that our election system is more fair and more robust. You mentioned nonpartisan redistricting. I think that there is no bigger threat to our democracy than extreme partisan gerrymandering. You cannot run fair elections with unfair districts, and so it's incumbent upon the Secretary of State to take leadership on that issue.
On the issue of balance, Connie Lawson, when I posed that question, talked about a very recent example of this Democratic Party accidentally sent out faulty absentee ballot applications to a lot of voters. And Connie Lawson was alerted to the problem, stepped up and said, I want clerks to accept these. Isn't that a good case for the balance is already there because she's acting in a nonpartisan way?
So I think it's pretty clear that Secretary Lawson has done a lot of things that have made it harder for people to vote in this state and that have reduced our voter turnout. And initially, Secretary Lawson was not saying that those forms should be accepted. It's pretty clear that the absentee ballot forms complied with the spirit of state law. You know, obviously there were some issues with them, and I'm glad that everything got resolved. But initially, Secretary Lawson wasn't pushing for those to be accepted. And there are other examples, like the voter purge last year. Secretary Lawson eliminated about 500,000 Hoosier voters from the voter rolls. A federal judge later came in and said that that was illegal, that that violated federal law. I don't think that that was an area of bipartisan compromise or consensus.
Thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
And volunteers are helping to replace and modernize a stretch of the raised boardwalk at Bean Blossom Bottoms Nature Preserve. Interim Director of Sycamore Land Trust, John Lawrence, says replacing around a third of the boardwalk is about more than making it last longer.
To make it a little taller, a little more durable, and also hopefully a better experience for visitors.
Lawrence says they hope to have the boardwalk open for visitors by the end of the year. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis, lawmg.com. The IU School of Education, preparing teachers, scholars, and administrators to improve teaching in Indiana and around the world. education.indiana.edu. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.